once again, without further ado, we have Tiffany Ward here from Richmond, Virginia. Thank you, Tiffany, for coming on tonight to kick off Women's History Month. And I call this, on this series, and on this meetup, I call it Women in Real Estate. So Tiffany is a mother, an investor, a CrossFit training coach, right? And she got started in real estate when she was in her 20s, right? 23, I believe it was, right, Tiffany?
Yep.
And she is she has served as a key principal. And Tiffany has a passion for real estate. She really does, right? She has a passion for real estate. She loves real estate. She loves doing it. And she started as she started with a single family and turned that passion into a multifamily where she was in Virginia and North Carolina, right? And right now she's doing a flip. She has a Airbnb, right? And tonight she's going to talk about staying in your lane, how to find your lane and stay in your lane when you invest in real estate. So Tiffany, once again, thank you for coming on, and the floor is yours.
I appreciate it, Laddie. And hopefully today I'll tell you some of the pitfalls that I've had, right? So I know I'm talking about staying in your lane, but I, like a lot of people, I have shiny light syndrome, and that's why I've done so many things, because it's difficult to stay in your lane. So hopefully I'll give you some tips and strategies that I'm working on now to implement and definitely stay in my lane moving forward. But as Lawrence mentioned, I am Tiffany Ward. I'm based in Richmond, Virginia, where I grew up, born and raised. I did attend Old Dominion University, like Angie, for undergrad, and Virginia Commonwealth for VCU. And then I got out of school I got out of undergrad and I had to move back home. And so effectively, my parents still had me on a curfew, which was not fun as a 22-year-old. And I decided I wanted to move out. And I don't know that my parents necessarily instilled it in me, but I knew that I did not want to rent. I had rented briefly. I moved across the country with a boyfriend at the time, and we rented. And I just knew that I wanted to own. My parents had been property owners of their home, and they were debt-free since I was born. And so I knew that I wanted to own my own property. So at 23, like Lawrence mentioned, I bought my first property. It was a foreclosed home, so it was a HUD home, and I house hacked. So I didn't know what house hacking was at the time, but I just knew that I had this big mortgage and I was afraid I couldn't pay my bills. So I asked my best friend to move in with me to help me pay the bills. And then I ended up getting 2 additional jobs. So I already had 1 job. So I got 3 jobs, and I had my girlfriend move in with me because I was so afraid that I was not gonna be able to pay my mortgage. Everything worked out well. I did it the right way. I had a mortgage, a lease agreement in place. But I eventually took another job after obtaining my master's, right? I took another job. I got a promotion with a different company, and I moved. And so then that turned me into a full-time landlord because I was renting out the house because I moved from Richmond up to the DC area. During that time, I made a lot of mistakes. I did not raise the rent. You'll find a theme in this as you listen to me talk. I didn't raise the rents, and I wasn't charging enough. So when things needed to be repaired or replaced, of course, I was just paying the mortgage, but I didn't have enough to really meet those capital expenditures, right? So when the HVAC went out, when the dishwasher went out, hot water heater, all of those things came out of my pocket because I was not raising rent, and I didn't raise the rent. I didn't raise the rent for probably like 6 or 7 years, y'all. So it's pretty bad. But fast forward, I ended up getting married. So I moved back home to Richmond. I did purchase a property at that time for myself and my husband to live into, my ex-husband. I got divorced, y'all. My ex-husband. And so in buying that place, I still didn't know a whole lot about real estate. I knew that I had an itch for it. I knew that I was interested in it. I had actually taken, I don't know if y'all heard of like Than Merrill. I had went to his fortune builders course, and they try to charge you all this money, like 30 grand, to teach you stuff. And I wasn't ready to jump into that. It didn't sound above board to me, but I'm sure plenty of people found that to be beneficial for them. But I didn't know much still about being a landlord or invested in real estate at that point. It turned out that property that I purchased when I was married was not a great it wasn't a bad purchase, but it wasn't a great purchase because I didn't realize at the time it was a townhouse, right? And then I had an HOA with a townhouse, but I also have flood insurance. So at the time, the rents would not exceed the mortgage, HOA, and flood insurance. I also bought the house against my, I wasn't smart enough. There was a big crack in the wall. And the home inspector at that time said, oh, it's no issue. So I just took their word for it. Of course, that big crack in the wall ended up costing me like $10,000 to fix. So with the mortgage, HOA, and flood insurance, in addition to the renovation I had to do, that place was not a great place to rent at the time. So when I was looking to rent it out, I ended up selling that place and I bought a duplex because at this time, I don't know if I was like, let's say 30, I don't know. I had started to really like listen to Bigger Pockets. So I would say for anybody who's getting started, I love Bigger Pockets. They talk about a wide variety of techniques, a lot of strategies, financing, lenders, wholesaling, construction, all that stuff. I was really starting to dig into Bigger Pockets and learn a little bit more about real estate. And at that time, I said, well, I want to get 10 properties in my name. Is my retirement strategy. I'm going to get 10 properties. And then when I get 60, I'll just sell off a property a year, and that'll be kind of part of my retirement strategy. So I thought to myself, hey, I want to get a duplex. There was a duplex listed on the market. It was turnkey. I lived in the top, and I rented out the bottom, and it came with a tenant. And luckily that tenant was excellent. She paid her bills on time. She was quiet. I didn't have any issues with her. And I sold that townhome that didn't make sense. Okay, so that was in 2018. And I think I sold that townhome after I had moved into the duplex. At that point, as I was digging a little bit deeper into real estate, I started to go into local meetups. And then I got a mentor. So my mentor at the time was really coaching me on single family because, you know, when you go to these meetups, everybody's talking about what? Flipping houses, wholesale and flipping houses. Nobody's talking multifamily at that point. But my mentor, you know, of course, as a good mentor should, he said, well, what are your goals? And I said, hey, well, I want to acquire 10 properties because that's how many I can own in my name. And then, you know, I'll just sell them down the road. And so through him, he was actually the one who introduced me to multifamily, and he brought me a 10 unit, right? So he said, hey, I have this deal. You said you want 10 properties. Why not do it all at once? And from that point, I think the light switch went off as far as multifamily, because, you know, I was thinking, okay, I'm about one property a year, and it's, you know, I'm just going to get to this thing over time. And I really didn't understand that people were buying apartment buildings, you know, that I could buy one or be invested in one. And really the power of economies of scale. Because, you know, I didn't mention that, but when I got married and I bought that townhome, we bought another home, right? A bigger home. And my townhome sat empty for a while. And so if you think about that as a single family investor, if you don't have a tenant in place, or if that tenant doesn't pay you, then guess what? You got to come out of pocket for that mortgage. So the light bulb just went off to me when I was approached with this 10 unit property. Number one, I'm a high income earner, right? So I work a W-2. Sorry if you can hear my son in the back. I'm a high income earner. Hold on, buddy. Sorry, y'all. But I'm a high income earner. So I had some capital that I could put into a deal. And I think that's key for multifamily. You need to be able to have some capital to put into the deal. They call it skin in the game. So for me, because I had some capital set aside, I was able to act as the key principal for that deal, which just means I brought a lot of the money to the deal. I signed on the loan, and that gave me the experience to go out and do additional deals now on my own. And I have pretty much the most equity, the most ownership share, in the property. So when that 10 unit came to me, I really started to shift my focus away from the fix and flips and into more the multifamily lane. But I bought that property, the 10 unit, in 2019. So guess what happened in 2020? We all got hit with COVID. And so I predominantly look for value add opportunities. And when COVID hit, my property was in Greensboro. And of course, those rents there were about $500 a unit. And so who was hit the hardest during COVID, y'all? It was our low income earners, right? Our everyday worker bees, the people, our blue collar kind of workers, right? So they stopped paying. So what does that mean? In order to be invested in multifamily, you really need to have a lot of cash reserves. So you need to buy right. You need to have some capital to get into the deal. And then you also need to have some capital to float the deal in the event that something happens. Now, something like COVID or depression, they're few and far in between, but they do happen. So these emergencies, these disasters, these life events do happen. And that's why you want to make sure you have your capital reserves. You want to make sure that your numbers work out well as you're underwriting a deal. And that you got the bankroll to support the deal. So the more that you learn about multifamily investing, you'll know that you need someone kind of with that net worth and with that liquidity, that access to capital to get the deal done. So I think it was Gal earlier who was on, and he mentioned he was like a gap funder and acted as a key principal. You want to make sure that you're networking and that you're putting yourself around those types of people such that you can get the deal done. Because, I'm not going to say that my mentor at the time couldn't get the deal done. He could. I think he was, offering me a leg up and just a different perspective in that offer for the 10 unit. But as you get to these larger deals, a lot of deals will fall through. You might be excellent at driving around, calling owners, property owners. You might be able to get something under contract, but if you don't have the equity partners, the people with the bankroll, the money, you're not going to be able to get that deal completed. And so today, during that process, during COVID, we did have a capital call. I had to put up some additional funding as well as a few of my partners. So we did have to bring some additional money to the table to get us through COVID. And we were able to recoup some of that money, through the various programs that the government and the cities offered us. So moving on forward, I think that was in 2020. Since then, I have been I've done joint ventures with another group on a 30 unit in Charlotte. I've also last year invested passively. So there's a big difference I'm learning in investing actively, which is when you're on the general partnership team or you're doing a joint venture. It's considered an active investment. You have a role versus passive. And so I opened up my self-directed IRA. It was this term that I had been hearing about since I had started listening to Bigger Pockets and going to these meetups and diving into other content. So last year I opened up a self-directed IRA. Because I had made that job switch that I told you about, I had some money sitting, a 401k that I had rolled into an IRA with like Charles Schwab or whoever it was with, TD Ameritrade. So I was able to roll some funds over into my self-directed IRA, which is a great retirement vehicle. There's a lot of rules and regulations around the self-directed IRA, but I was able to deploy that capital into 2 deals passively. So effectively, I trusted someone else enough, and they put together these nice documents. They tell you what their plans are for the property. They tell you who their partners are and their strategy and all these things, and you invest in a deal, right? You give your money to someone else. And I think for a lot of people, that is really the first step. A lot of people they don't have mentors around them to kind of give them deals. They don't want to truly be active. Maybe they have a W-2 that they're busy with, and they don't want to be active in the deal. So they invest passively. And that's what I was able to do last year. I got into 2 different deals with people that I kind of been following for a while, and I felt confident in their strategy in the markets. And so what that allows me to do is I was able to deploy my capital. If anybody's investing in the stock market, you know that the stock market right now is horrible. So I was able to deploy my capital in a different vehicle into real estate, which I'm passionate about, which will give me, different returns from what the market is doing. And it allowed me to diversify my portfolio because I still have stocks. I still have a 401k that I max out every year with my current job. I've dabbled into crypto and all that stuff, but what I'm really passionate about is real estate. And so it allowed me to kind of invest and have my money working for me passively versus the active investments. And so today, in the midst of all of that, I'm going to get to the path, y'all, finding your path. In the midst of all of that, during COVID, last year, I did that same duplex that I had. I had my downstairs tenant and my upstairs tenant moved out at the same time. And at this time, Airbnb is hot. People are outside again. So I was like, I'm going to try my hand at Airbnb. 1 second. I'm going to try my hand at Airbnb. So, I launched into that. I had to turn over the units anyway. That downstairs tenant had been there, 6 or 7 years. So she needed a full turn of her unit. The upstairs unit was still in good shape, but I put a good amount of money into it. And, I fully furnished it and I listed it. And I was able to get, I think I listed it just playing around. My mom was like, you need to go ahead and post this. And I think I posted it on a Saturday, not really knowing what I was doing. And I had an instant book on Monday, and I still had people there working on the property, like putting in doors. I was like, oh my gosh. Airbnb is a totally different strategy, right? So I talked to you guys so far about single family investing. I've talked to you about multifamily investing a little bit. And then now I'm venturing into the short-term space, right? And it's really 3 different strategies, right? That I'm just shiny light syndrome. I'm like, okay, I want to do this. And okay, this seems cool. And then, okay, now everybody's doing the Airbnbs, right? And then as Laddie mentioned, I've been trying for a while to get my first flip, and I'm under contract right now on my first flip. But that's a whole different thing. And so, the key thing that I want to talk to you about as far as your lane is don't be like me. Don't get shiny light syndrome because it will slow your progress down. I think if I was laser focused during pandemic, I could have escalated or elevated my real estate career had I been laser focused on one lane, right? So if I say, hey, I want to go all in on single family, I'm only going to analyze single family deals. I'm going to make 10 offers a week. I'm going to talk to 10 wholesalers. I'm going to talk to, and I put these KPIs, these key performance indicators in place, and I was all in on the single family. Well, anybody who invested in anything during COVID is killing it. Like they probably had an awesome deal, right? Especially on the single family side. I think the same thing was true for multifamily, especially if you were doing shorter holds, where if you could get into a deal, you could push the rents up, maybe you add some value, make things look better. I mean, I know people who were flipping over deals within a year or 2 time, and they were significantly growing their profit. I mean, 2x, 3x multipliers, right? But again, those people were laser focused. They were talking to brokers. They were putting themselves out there in the age of social media. They were attracting capital. And the same thing for the short-term rental space, right? So it's really about, you have to know your risk tolerance. I would say that's one thing. You have to know how you feel about money. Are you okay to lose some money? Are you okay to put out a little bit, and how quickly do you want it back? Because that will help you determine your strategy. Multifamily typically is a longer term game, right? You're going to put your money typically into a deal for 3, 5, 7 years, right? And then you might be waiting on quarterly distributions, right? And that's really passive play. Or if you're on a GP team, or if you're doing a joint venture, you might see some cash flow a little bit more frequently, but it's typically large sums of money that is deployed for longer periods of time, right? But there are tax advantages, there's write-offs, there's incentives, right? To that long-term gain. If you're looking for single families, and maybe you're doing fix and flips, where you're going to get some cash flow pretty quickly, right? But you're going to get killed on taxes, right? And you have to be very active. You have to be very confident in your team. You have to constantly be making offers because you're constantly looking for that next deal, and you want to keep your contractors busy. And then you have to worry about people. Like, tenants will mess up your stuff in either situation, but it hits a lot harder when you have one unit and they mess up your unit, and now you got to put all these renovations and repairs into it, versus if you have multi, which is why I still like the multifamily. That's my end game, right? And then the same thing for short-term rentals. It's you need some capital to get started, but it is very time intensive, which is why, like, for me, I pivoted on my strategy. I had my short-term rental up for about 6 months. It did cash flow very well. And then, the winter months in my market, it slows down. But I hated being attached to my phone, right? I had guests calling me at 2 a.m. wanting to change the sheets, people complaining that there was no water in the fridge, and the sign said it was because my cleaner didn't put it there. My cleaner not mopping the floor. Like, if you have the patience and the mindset for it, definitely, go to the short-term rentals or the midterm rentals. But like, for me, as a W-2 employee, that strategy, after deploying it and living in it for 6 months, it didn't really make sense for me, because I travel for work, I have my son, I have my life, and I didn't want to be attached to my phone. Like, every time my phone would buzz, I was literally like, oh my gosh, this is my guest. Oh my God. Oh my God. Like, that amount of stress for me is not a good strategy. So you have to know yourself, right? You have to know your risk tolerance. You have to know yourself, and like, what you are prepared for. Do you like people? If you don't like people, short-term rentals, Airbnb is not for you. If you cannot be pleasant on that phone or phone calls, like, short-term rentals are not for you. If you don't do well in high stress situations, fix and flips, probably not for you, right? Because the contractor might walk away with your money. You might have people that don't show up for the job. You really just need to know yourself, and like, what your risk tolerance is and your temperament for your investments, and really what your strategy is, and stick to it. And so for me, what I've been working on this year is just being more intentional about my KPIs, which is my key performance indicators, right? So what am I tracking week to week that is going to move the ball forward in my multifamily investing, right? So what I'm tracking currently is, how many brokers am I reaching out to? The brokers typically have the deals in multifamily, right? How many property managers am I reaching out to? The property managers are going to be the best people to help you gauge what rents are, how much you can boost the market rents in a certain neighborhood. How likely is it that you can turn the units at the speed that you want to turn them? What amenities you could add in certain areas. So, how many property managers am I talking to? How many deals am I underwriting, right? You can't buy a deal if you're not underwriting the deals, guys, right? Like, you have to be looking at so many deals and talking to so many brokers to, like, let's say you look at 100 deals, maybe 10 of them make sense, and then maybe LOI on 5, and then maybe you get to the final round on 1 or 2 of them, right? So it's really a volume game. And so I'm tracking how many deals am I underwriting and looking at every month. I'm also tracking what I'm looking at right now is I am about to sell my 10 units. So we're under contract. We should be closing, I think later this month. And so for me, I need to talk to my tax professional because there's some planning that goes into you put this money into these deals for a number of years, right? And then when the money comes out, you still get hit with taxes, y'all. The tax man is going to get you, right? But that's where you need your tax strategy and how am I going to redeploy this capital, right? What is my next move? Obviously, talking to the brokers, talking to the property managers, analyzing deals is one step of it because you're finding your next deal, but it might be to your advantage to invest passively. It might be to your advantage to do something a little bit smaller versus larger, right? So just having that relationship with your tax professional is something that I'm working on, and just having those cadences and making sure I have the key tax person in my corner. The other thing that I've been doing, like I mentioned, my self-directed IRA, is just I realized, like I mentioned for the short-term rentals, I didn't like the stress of like that volume. I like the idea of passive investing because I'm still a W-2 employee. I don't plan to walk away from my job at any time soon. How can I maximize these retirement accounts? My self-directed, opening an account for my son, a Coverdale. How can I be a lender, which is something that I've done in the last year, right? How can I do some passive things that don't take as much time and mental space and like constantly being on your phone or analyzing deals? Again, how do I deploy my capital and make my money work for me, right? Because if I'm working my W-2, that's 8 hours at least a day that I don't have to focus on a short-term rental or to focus on a flip. So for me in choosing my lane, I like that. I like the lender hat, right? I like analyzing your deal, saying, okay, I'll fund this. And then it goes away. It's out of sight, out of mind for the most part. I might do some draws or go look at the property, but it doesn't take a whole lot of energy or effort for 6 months. And then you give me my money back, right? So for me, it's just been a lot of evaluating like why I previously had the shine light syndrome and this fear of missing out. Fear of missing out is not a strategy, y'all. Don't do it. It's not cost effective. It's not time effective. But just like really fine tuning what I want my life to look like, what I want my son's life to look like. So it's really having those conversations with myself about the end goal. Like we talk a lot in this group, in Laddie's group, about goal setting and like mindset. And so it's like, take that 1,000-foot view, look at it from like, where do I want to be in 10 years or 30 years, right? Then you bring it in. Where do I want to be in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 1 year, right? What do I want to accomplish this quarter? And that's really what I've been doing to break down those big goals into small bite-sized chunks. Again, looking at things from a weekly perspective to make sure I'm being actionable, because we all can get busy with the day-to-day demands of life, right? And how many days have you sat around and you had all these intentions and you did nothing? And then you wake up and it's a new month. And then you wake up and it's like the year is over. And you look back and you're like, what did I get accomplished? I didn't do anything I said I wanted to do, right? And so for me, it's just like really understanding those big picture goals, those large goals, and then making sure I have actionable steps every week, right, to just chip away at those larger goals. And I think that too helps you get focused. It helps you stay focused on the goal, because for me, if let's say I set 3 big goals for the quarter, 3 to 5 big goals for the quarter. If I can see week after week that I'm not contacting brokers, is that important to me, right? If I can see week after week that I have not analyzed any deals, do I really want a deal? Like, why am I not doing that KPI? Why am I missing that, right? And so it helps you to evaluate, is this really important to me? And I think so often, again, we get shining light syndrome. We see all these things we want to do. We make them as goals, right? oh, I have to go and do this, but it's really not important to you. And so I think like when you clearly outline what those goals are for the quarter or year, however you do it, and then if you see week after week, you're doing nothing to move the needle, maybe that goal is not as important as you thought it was, right? And it's okay to reshuffle the deck as long as you're not doing it too frequently, right? Because you want to attack your goals, I would say, on a quarterly basis, unless it's just drastically wrong, right? You want to attack your goals on a quarterly basis, work hard to reach that, and then reevaluate, reshuffle. You know, I really worked hard on my short-term rental. I executed on the strategy. I, had all these guests. I tried to provide excellent service. You know what? I hate this. Out, right? Out. Um, and I can be that simple, right? You have to have those mirror moments and do those self-evaluations to say, is this really working for me? But for me moving forward, I've been talking for a while, I'm gonna drink some tea. For me moving forward, I'm definitely like all in on the multifamily. And everything else is kind of secondary. So as I look at my weekly indicators, I hit my multifamily goals first. Everything else goes second. If I get to it, I do. If I don't, I don't. Because I have my goals that I want to hit and I know what my big picture looks like. So I'll pause there. I feel like I've been talking for a little bit. I don't know if anybody has any questions about anything specific. But I want to drink some tea real quick, clear my throat.
So anybody has a question? Angie, Paula, Elena, Latoya, Harrietta, Danielle?
I don't have a question, but I do want to say thank you for the experience you're offering in terms of trying the different things that are out there and kind of bouncing around and coming, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on, because there's so much to real estate and it's hard to figure out what would be the best strategy. And sometimes it is this trial and error that kind of needs to happen before, you can focus on something.
Definitely.
So I'm there with you.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's so hard to just pick something and stick with it. But I think when you're evaluating so many different things, I've gotten caught up in analysis paralysis, right? So it's like, oh, I like this short-term rental thing, and I'm gonna look at this, and I like these, like this lending, and I like this multifamily, and then there's crisis housing, and then there's storage units, and then and you're like, and like to me, I realized like I could have just been pushing forward so much faster had I just been like multifamily or whatever it was, like flips. I'm only analyzing these deals. I'm only looking at this. And there's nothing wrong the way I've rationalized it in my mind. There's nothing wrong with having those goals and wanting to experience those things, but it's just like my mentor, he said, what do you want to do now? It's not necessarily what do you want to do for the rest of your life? It's like, what do you want to do now? Where do you want to start? And I think a lot of us have a problem picking somewhere to start. And you can pick anything. You just say, look, I want to start at wholesaling. I want to start at flipping, right? And you just start, and you laser focus, and then you can always circle back around to those list of goals. It's a struggle though. I'm still working on it. I don't know anybody who's perfected it. I feel like everybody kind of dips and dabbles, but there are a few and they're uber successful.
I'm going to ask you a question because you're talking about analysis paralysis, and I fall under that category, right? Because I look at the deal, look at the people going, checking numbers instead of just going forth with it, right? How do you plan on overcoming your analysis paralysis? What steps are you taking?
For me, I'm in a couple. So first of all, guys, I don't know if I said it. I mentioned that I had a mentor, but I definitely recommend that you get a mentor and accountability groups. And to me, there are two different things. A mentor typically should be at least 2 to 3 steps beyond where you want to be, right? They've done what you're doing. They have the experience in that thing that you've chosen. The accountability groups is what's key to kill the analysis paralysis. I feel like, hopefully I don't make an overgeneralization. I feel like most people are susceptible to the group dynamics, like most of us. Most of us, we don't want to sit in a group and everybody else around you is doing deals. And you show up to that accountability call, whether it's every week, every month, and people are asking you, what are you doing? What are you up to? And you haven't done anything. To me, that is the quickest way to kill your analysis paralysis, because either you're going to get booted out of that group or you're going to rise to the occasion. And so for me, I have been very intentional in changing the groups that I'm moving into. And I was wasting so much time. I think it's important that you go to the meetups because you need a network. Like networking is key. You need the relationships are everything in pretty much any industry, but especially real estate. But I was wasting time. I thought I was doing something because I showed up to 5 meetups this month. Oh, I've been to every meetup and I met Lawrence and I met Angie. None of that matters if you're not executing. And Lawrence and Angie and Alina are not going to take your call. Trust me, they're not going to take your call if you're not doing anything. So you will either rise to the occasion or you will get pushed out of the group. And so for me, the way that I'm overcoming my analysis paralysis is that I've been very intentional in the masterminds and the groups that I'm putting myself in front of, because if they're worth anything, and if your mastermind or your accountability is worth anything, they're going to hold you accountable. And they're going to say, Tiffany, you said you were going to reach out to 5 brokers last week. Why are you not hitting that? Is it not important? You know, and then you'll realize they went out to lunch without you. They're going on trips without you. They're doing deals without you, right? And you'll realize that separation starts to happen. And then there's just a sense of pride, right? So we do, in my accountability group, you show your KPIs and how many you've hit for the week. And we do that weekly. My pride won't let me sit there and put up zeros every week. Like, what? You can't show up. Either you won't show up because you're ashamed because you didn't do anything. Or again, you're going to be like, everybody else is crushing their goals and I'm putting up zeros, goose eggs. That don't work. So for me, the group dynamic, but you have to know yourself. Everybody doesn't work well in a group dynamic. So maybe that one-on-one time with a mentor is what you need, or maybe you just need a small group of 2 or 3. But for me, that is how I'm killing my analysis paralysis, by putting myself in different groups with people who are doing more than I'm doing. Like if I'm in the multifamily space, right? They've done 2 deals already this year. They raised millions of dollars of capital. You know, they're looking at other opportunities in the commercial space. If I'm on the single family side, maybe they acquired 3 properties this month. And I'm like, I'm still trying to get my first property. Again, like it's that group dynamic for me that's going to make me successful. And that's what's made me successful, I would say, across the board. Like as I work on my physical fitness, which was one of my goals I set in this group. I like group classes, which is why I like CrossFit. If it's up to me, I will go to the gym and I'll get it done. But I'm going to work harder if it's competitive. I'm going to work harder if somebody's counting on me in a partner workout, or if somebody's looking to me for leadership because I'm the coach. I got to outdo the people that I'm coaching, right? Like I can't be slacking as a coach. So for me, it's all about the group dynamics. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you. Anybody else? Angie, had a question?
No, not at the moment. No.
Well, I have one more question, Tiffany, because you
Yeah,
said
go ahead.
right now you're laser focused on multifamily. So where are you laser focused at? What area? What area What part of the United States are you laser focused at? Staying at
So
home.
I'm looking here in Richmond, Virginia. A lot of people are saying this market is saturated. I'm getting my arms around that, but I'm also looking at Hampton Roads because it's within driving distance. I go down there quite a bit for work, and I'm able to kind of get down there and see properties and make connections. I won't even say I'm really looking at it, because I have ties and properties in North Carolina. Like, I will evaluate some deals because I feel like I have boots on the ground there. I have connections that'll help me get the deal done. Those are really my only markets that I'm laser focused on right now. I've considered some other markets, as I meet with my mentor, they advise 2 or 3 target markets. So for me, like Richmond, MSA is a market, metropolitan statistical area. Hampton Roads, like Norfolk, Virginia Beach, MSA is a market. And so then it might be like, I don't really claim it, but Greensboro, that area could be another MSA for me because I have existing properties there. So that's where I'm focused on.
Okay, thank you.
So what size multifamilies?
I'm still looking right now because I like the idea of joint ventures. I like 5 to 20 units, and I'm probably looking at things that are under 3 million because I know with my network right now and the people that I've built relationships with, we can bring that capital to the table without capital raising. I have started to post more, and it's one of the bigger challenges for me. It's just consistently posting on social media to attract capital to me. So some of the things that I'm doing that I haven't talked about, I have a local RVA Multifamily Meetup. So that is for local investors to see me as the point person for the market. I'm the only free multifamily meetup, residential meetup. I'm probably the only free meetup in Richmond right now. So I'm doing that, and I host my meetings the first Thursday of every month. And then I also have like a Diversified Wealth group, which is the way that I'm giving back. It's a Facebook group for marginalized individuals to understand the power of real estate investing. So in that group, we talk about fix and flips, lending, wholesaling. We talk about multifamily. So that's just one of the ways that I'm giving back. And eventually, me posting on social media more, right? As I post on Facebook, as I post on LinkedIn, and as I grow my RVA multifamily group, that should attract, the thought process is that should attract more capital and more opportunities to me. So I haven't fully pivoted to like a capital raising syndication style. I'm learning that. I'm slowly building out my processes for that and my infrastructure. I'm having more meetings with people and trying to figure out their criteria. Are they accredited? What type of returns are they looking for? But it's not something that I'm actively implementing, executing on right now. So right now, I'm pretty much, like I said, looking for 5 to probably 20 units, somewhere in that 3 million or less ballpark. And then I am just like working on partnerships. So, I've had some good relationships that I've formed in some of these meetups, and people who are actively looking at my target market, who have the experience on those larger syndicated deals. And so we're kind of partnering up where I might be looking at the smaller stuff, they might be looking at the bigger stuff. We're comparing notes. And it just makes us more, I would say, it makes us, hopefully it will make us more successful because we can show the breadth of experience, right? We can go to the different brokers, we can divide and conquer, right? It helps to have a team, which is what I focus on building my team out, having some people that I can trust, having some people that have the capital, have the equity or the liquidity that I need. So that's really what I'm focusing on, but 5 to 20 is what I'm looking at.
So if you found the deal tomorrow, do you have the team that you would take this to?
Yes, I have the key people I would take it to, right? And it just depends because if you have somebody like Lawrence wants to hold forever. So depending on the deal, if I say, oh, this is a great hold for 10 years, I might go to Lawrence, right? If it's a larger deal, value add play, and we can hold it for 5 to 7 years, I might partner with a different person if it's a bigger deal, syndication, and they have that experience. But yeah, I would say I have probably 5 people, depending on the strategy. If it's a true joint venture and maybe it's a little bit smaller, it's 5 units, it's 6 units, I have people I can go to who have the capital, who maybe they're vertically integrated, maybe they're single family investors and they've been itching to get into the multifamily. And then I could be their experience, and I can get some bonus points for that, some bonus equity, not equity, some equity in the deal for being the experience for them. So it really just depends on the deal, but I've definitely been building out my partnerships for that. So yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alina. I know I sound horrible, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep it clear.
That's all right. That's all right. You're okay. You're okay.
I was just curious where your properties are located here in Greensboro.
Alamance Church. Know what that is?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that's where my 10 unit, my first multifamily property. The other one is in Charlotte. So it's in the Charlotte MSA. It's not in Greensboro. And then the passive deals are in Charlotte and Alabama. Birmingham.
Anyone have any other questions? This is free, but it gets questions out.
$3.99. No. I try to offer most stuff for free. Maybe I'll get to that level where I can charge people for stuff, or where I feel good to charge people. But I still feel like I'm learning. I still have a lot of growing to do. I still have a lot of things to experience. And I just like to give the knowledge. So in my meetup, which hopefully Angie will come to, in my meetup, it's almost like a mastermind. I literally give people all the information that I've paid for, all the hours of podcasts and YouTubes I've looked at. I mean, I just give it all and I don't charge. Maybe as it grows and I need to pay for a space, which is my challenge, I might charge people $5 or $10 just to cover the charge of the space. But yeah, I don't have any intentions of charging anybody for anything, because I personally don't think I'm ready yet. And I like the idea that we're collaborative, right?
Mhm.
Like, I want you to go and sharpen your skills and your knowledge so you can help me, and then I can help you. And to me, like, that's how the partnerships work. It's just like, where are you strong? Where are you strong? And let's collaborate. So that's really why, my meetup is structured the way it is, and my Diversified Wealth group. It's just, how can we help each other and partner with each other? And then how can we help other people have access to this environment? So, everybody knows that multifamily, it's a capital intensive game. Most of the people that get into a larger deal syndication is 50K. A lot of people it's 100K. That's why your relationships are key, because you might be able to be like, hey, can I slide in 25K over here? And get into a deal. But it's also just your relationships, right? Maybe what my goal is the same way that my mentor helped me. If I can help someone else get their experience on paper, sign a loan, get into a deal, like, that would be great for me. We all benefiting, right? I don't want y'all to think that we don't benefit. It doesn't have to be in the form of a $5,000 course or a $50,000 course. One day I hope to get it to a Jake and Gino level or something like that. But we're all going to benefit from the deal, because if I help you, maybe I'll get a small piece of the equity splits, right? But you're going to get experience. Maybe you're gonna sign a loan. You're going to have more income, right? So you might benefit more than me in that scenario, but I benefit from helping. And sometimes, for me, I'm helping people underwrite deals all the time. Not that I'm the expert underwriter, but there are so many people who just don't understand. And so I look at people's deals and I just look at them. I'm like, hey, just verbal. This is an NDA non-compete. I'll help you understand your numbers, with the understanding that eventually, somewhere, somehow, it'll come back to me. So it's like, I don't have to have my hands in everybody's deals. I hate when people do that. I have a pet peeve, and I've had that happen to me as I was coming up. Everybody wants to take a piece of something, and I feel like it'll come back around to me. So if y'all need help, I throw it out there. Call me, text me. I prefer, I'm a millennial. Text me or email me first. We can set up a time, and then I can help you, underwrite your deal or talk through some different things. And I won't try to take your deal. I won't steal it from you. I won't be like, you need to give me 10%, whatever, like whatever help you need. I just like to extend myself to you all. So, and again, I'm not the expert. I'll point you in the right direction. I'd be like, oh, you need this, I'm not sure, go over here. I've been kind of a connector these days. So I try to help you, try to be the plug a little bit and the connector. So if anybody needs any help, feel free to reach out to me.
Well, anybody have any questions? Well, thank you, Tiffany.
Yes.
Thank you very much. You put some great information out. There's a 16-lane highway out here. Pick your lane, right? Don't be all over the place.
Don't pick all of them, because then you won't make no progress.
You're stuck, right? So you got to pick a lane and invest in real estate. And then, like Tiffany said, stay focused on that lane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stay focused on the lane you're in, and don't worry about what everybody else is doing. So, Tiffany, and I want to thank you very much for coming on tonight. I appreciate you taking time from your family